get
Let's
started.
introduce ourselves. Let's start with that. Yeah, I'm
That
doing the
sounds good.
Q&A about Kickstarter Con.
We're
So my
so
name is
professional.
Cora Blaine. I'm an indie author. I write fantasy, romantic fantasy, and this live is part of our new series, me and Ash and Amy Nova, that we're doing that I think we're calling Indie Visible, but it's just about indie marketing. Um, and we're going to do different topics. And tonight is Ask Me Anything About Kickstarter because I've done several Kickstarters. So I've done three so far. One was successful, technically, barely. That was my first one. I learned a lot. My last two went very well, um, and I've learned a lot in all of that experience in the past year. I've done three in the last year. So, and this is
Hi, I'm Ash, Ash Wren. I gotta remember what my pen name is. And I am a writer in progress. I have zero credentials. I'm just fun to be around. And good at wrangling monkeys, so I'm here to support.
she has lots of credentials, including the fact that she's super smart. So that's never
Well,
that's
thank
never
you.
unhelpful. It's always good to have Ash around. She's very helpful.
You're sweet.
Yeah. So this is about Kickstarter. So, like I said, I've done three in the past year, and I will at some point kind of go over some of my mistakes or some of my like commonly seen things that I see authors do that they maybe could do differently or better. Um, and but I'm also going to tell you, the main things to pay attention to and the main things to make sure you do as well. So my three Kickstarters, one just ended. The last two raised in the five figures, over 10,000. I'm reading the comments as I'm talking. This is probably not
I
good.
know.
Um, and so the first two things I always tell people who come and ask me about it is one, there is a Facebook Kickstarter for Authors group. Join it. I don't care if you hate Facebook. But really, if like you can't join that for some reason, at least read Kickstarter for Authors by Anthea Sharp. She's the one who runs that group. Those two things are amazing resources. Um, the group in particular is super, super helpful and so many free resources and a lot of helpful people. Um, and that can make a big difference in your success is just having their input. But if you can't be in the group, um, definitely read her book. Uh, what else? Read Anthea's book. Okay. We already have a question. Would be curious what your capital was in your net after all expenses. I will talk a little bit about that. I will definitely get to that part of it. But first, I'm going to go over really quick just what Kickstarter is because not everyone's actually all that familiar with it. A lot of people think it's like GoFundMe. It's not like GoFundMe. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see authors make is designing a campaign like it's a GoFundMe. So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform for creators. So there's all kinds of stuff on there. If you're not familiar, there's board games and new tech and all sorts of things. But there's also books, and their publishing portion is actually one of their smaller portions, but it's getting bigger and bigger and more popular. And motorcycle. um, so it is above all a retail platform. People are going there to shop for cool things. So you have to keep that in mind. They're not going there because they want to help artists. I mean, they do want to help artists, but that's not like I said, it's not like a GoFundMe. They don't just want to throw money at you. They want something cool in return, right? So the idea is you're crowdfunding so you can produce this cool product to give them. In our case, books, right? Um, Oh, and one other little caveat. I'm not going to discuss taxes. I know that taxes are probably going to come up as a question. I am not a tax advisor, and it also depends on where you live, state-wise and country-wise. And I will say for that, you're going to have to do your own research. Kickstarter does have some, frequently asked questions and things like that. They have a little like tax built-in calculator when you're trying to figure out like how much you want your goal to be. But I'm not going to answer a lot of specific questions about taxes because I'm not qualified to do that. So, oh, okay, Ella. Okay, Reagan. Yeah, what's our first question? Do we have a question? What are your guys' questions?
So the first question was about expenses. What was your net out after costs of the Kickstarter were kind of handled and taken care of?
Um, so I'm gonna go with my last one because I haven't even figured that out for this one yet. Like I still have pledges coming in, payments that were errored that are being fixed and things like that, and I haven't ordered everything yet. So with my second Kickstarter, um, it grossed around 12,000. It was technically over 12,000, but there's always some errored and canceled pledges, like always. So in the end, it was right about 12,000, and I net about between 3,500 and 4,000 of that. I want to say like 3,800. I don't remember the exact number. So yeah, the majority of it goes to buying the product, shipping the product. Kickstarter also takes fees, 5%, and then yeah, shipping can kill you too. Definitely make sure you have a good estimate for your shipping. Um, I don't know where can we, let's see. If y'all don't have, I don't know where can we, let's see. If y'all don't have questions, I'm just going to start like going through the process. Oh, did you have capital start? Yes and no. So this is going to vary from person to person, right? Because ideally, you want a pretty product to put on the page right away. Now, if you can't afford to like pay a cover designer yet, that makes it more challenging. It doesn't make it impossible. Um, the reason I say it's tricky is that I design my own covers, right? So like for most of my Kickstarter upfront costs, they're not costing me anything because I do it all myself. I know not everyone does that though. So ideally, you will have some things in place, right? Like if you don't have all the art, that's fine. But like you want to typically, if you can, at least have a cover, um, and like some mock-ups for it and that kind of thing. I mean, there's free places to do mock-ups, but you can do it without spending any money. It just might be trickier depending on what your skill set is. And yeah. Okay. So let's see, what should I talk about next? What would you recommend having the book mostly done before setting up the Kickstarter? I would, Reagan. And that is because I have seen people set up Kickstarters for books that were not finished, that they had very good intentions on finishing in time, and then life happens, right? And then their backers are waiting, and it's just not a good look. It's not good customer service. I would have the book mostly ready to go. Now, if it's not proofread or whatever, because you want the Kickstarter money to pay for your editor, fine. But like, yeah, have it at least drafted. I would say definitely have it drafted. That's my advice. You don't have to follow it. Some people don't do that, but I have seen that go poorly. What was the genre? So mine are fantasy romance. Both fantasy and romance do very well on Kickstarter, but other genres also do well. I see other genres like kids books and mystery books and other things also do well. But mine are all fantasy. Using it to pay for editing. Yeah, you totally can use it to pay for editing. So the key here though is presentation. So this is what I mean about people thinking it's like a GoFundMe. So like you want to use it to pay for editing, or I want to use it to pay for audiobooks, or maybe you want to pay an artist for some art or whatever. Hi, A-Ray. But you don't want to present the campaign in like, help me pay for these expenses. You want to present the campaign as in, here's my awesome story, here's the beautiful book. And that's what they care about, frankly. Once they fall for the awesome story and buy the beautiful book, you use your profits for whatever you want. They don't care. Kickstarter backers don't care. So you don't have to even talk about that in your campaign. And I do see a lot of authors just basically get on Kickstarter and be like, hey, I'm an author, I'm an artist, help me pay to get my book out, help me pay my editor, help me pay my cover designer. And those campaigns very rarely succeed, because that is more like GoFundMe, right? And that's not, it's just a different platform. It's its whole little world. What else? Next question. Keep asking questions. I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. There's so many things.
Did you have a fan base first, or
Did I
what? Or was this debut books?
For my first one, I had a little bit of a fan base. Yeah, you're welcome, Taylor. You don't have to have a fan base though. That's what I want to emphasize that. Does it help if you have a big following, newsletter list or TikTok following, whatever? Sure, that helps. But you will actually get a surprising number of your backers from the Kickstarter website itself, total strangers to you. And that is another advantage of doing Kickstarter is you're getting your book in front of eyes that probably otherwise wouldn't ever find you, right? People that haven't seen you on TikTok or Insta or wherever else you are, like they don't know that you exist, but they do. I've gotten hundreds of new readers because of being on Kickstarter that don't follow me or whatever on social media necessarily, or they didn't, right, before Kickstarter. So it helps to have somewhat of a following. It helps to have somewhat of, ideally you have somewhat of a newsletter list, like 50, 100 people, something, but you don't have to. Where can we find the Kickstarter book and who's the author? So it's called Kickstarter for Authors. It's by Anthea Sharp. I'm assuming it's everywhere. I mean, I know it's on the Zon. I know it's on Anthea's website. It should be distributed widely. She also has some free resources, like she has a free checklist. And she also offers a thing called, what does she call it? Pre-flight check. I think she calls it a pre-flight check, where you can pay her like $50 and she will go look at your Kickstarter and give you detailed feedback. I haven't done that with her. I just didn't feel the need, but it's a good resource if you really want that extra help. I do not pay for boost and adverts. In general, I haven't done a lot of paid advertising as an author, but what I'm starting to form, like the opinion I'm starting to form on it is that advertising like on Facebook or Amazon, it can be good when you have like a super deal going on, 99-cent book, free book or whatever. I think it's good for that, but I think I maybe did run some ads during my very first Kickstarter. I didn't spend a lot, but it got me nothing. And most of the people in the Kickstarter group will tell you the same. Most of them don't have success with paid ads. So
Now, because I also don't know, is this a function of Kickstarter? Like they have a boost option or an advertise, or is this just like extra, like outside of the platform kind
outside
of
of
stuff?
Kickstarter, they don't necessarily have a boost option. What they have is things like they can, depending on what your book is and who you are as an author, they can highlight you in different groups. So like my books might end up being highlighted in like a list about, women authors or Latina or, Latine authors or whatever, that kind of thing. So you can ask for that kind of coverage from them. And that's just like a simple email. And they also do a Project We Love, which it's a mystery really to everyone how they choose Project We Love, because it's not always giant campaigns. Sometimes it's awarded in the first day, sometimes it's a week in. Like no one really understands how they choose Projects We Love. But when you get Project We Love, when you get that designation from Kickstarter, you do get highlighted more on their webpage. And that will get you more pledges. So, but it is a little bit of a mystery. Can you discuss physical rewards and setting costs for their tiers? Sure. So you do want to do math, right? So when you are setting your costs, you want to get your quotes from your printer. I so far have used POD, print on demand printers. Some people do print runs. I'm hoping to do a print run maybe next year. But you have to order a larger amount of books for that, right? So to set your costs, obviously you have to look at the cost of printing and shipping the book. Shipping the book can go different ways. You can have the book shipped to you and then you can ship it out to backers, or a lot of the printers will do a drop ship where they ship it directly to the backers. There's no wrong or right way to do it. It depends on your preference. There are pros and cons to both. I personally have them shipped to me because I want to sign them. I usually do sign books. And, if I was selling, I don't know, 600 books or something in a Kickstarter, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. But so far mine aren't that big. Because the other option is if you're selling loads of books, they can send you, like your printer can send you tip-in sheets or whatever. But anyway, so you get your estimate from your printer, you figure out your shipping, try to account for any shipping rises that might come. So like certain times of year, like USPS will raise their prices, for example. So try to pay attention to things like that and prepare for that in advance. And then you just have to do math and figure in things like the Kickstarter 5% fee. Let me pull up my spreadsheet really quick and see what else I accounted for, because my memory isn't the most helpful sometimes. Okay, so I accounted for 10%. So that accounts for the Kickstarter 5%, and then another 5%, I think maybe just to account for like extra, like the credit card, the Stripe fees or whatever. Or alternatively, sometimes people will have their payment fail and they'll choose to pay you through PayPal, right? Which also takes a fee. So you just want to combine all of those things to figure out your total amount for your tier, and you want to make a profit, right? Obviously, so you do the math, and it really depends on the book, the size of the book, how special of an edition, if at all. You don't have to do special editions on Kickstarter as far as how you price it. But it's pretty common to see hardcover special editions that are at least 300 or 400 pages be like anywhere from $60 to $80 on Kickstarter, which is what mine was. Mine was $65 this last time. So yeah, I do have spreadsheets, Taylor. I have all the spreadsheets. And yeah, you just have to kind of lay all that out. And to answer your question, John, it really depends on your tiers and your rewards and how much a profit you're making on each item, right? So this can be the tricky part, and this is the part where there's just some guesswork, and then you have to work with what you get, because you don't know how many people are going to come in pledging for ebook versus hardback, how many people are going to add on book box stuff. You don't know ahead of time, so it's really hard to say I need to have 9K and that's going to give me 3K. It's really hard to say that, because like for digital stuff, obviously the profit is almost 100%, right? Minus the fees. But then for physical, it's not 100%. And you want to do some estimates in your spreadsheets and like kind of plan out for different scenarios. And you want to keep in mind that Kickstarter backers who are looking for books like hardbacks first, paperbacks second, ebooks third, audiobooks fourth. So I do sell more hardbacks than paperbacks every time, for example. So you can kind of keep that in mind when you're doing your estimates, but you still just have no way of knowing exactly who's going to buy what and how many. So you're just doing a little bit of guesstimating. Let me see. What was per book net amount, setting the perks aside? For this last one, I'm looking.
Even that's hard because you get a deal if you can order a higher amount. So
right. So the printer I'm using this time, that's exactly it. The printer I'm using this time, the more books I order, the cheaper the book is, right? They do POD printing, but they're almost kind of like a hybrid print run company and POD. So like Book Vault, for example, you charge the same, or you pay the same per book no matter how many you buy. But this new printer that I'm using, the more books you buy, the cheaper it is per book. I want to say that for the hardcovers, 2%, 4%. Okay, I didn't factor in shipping. I want to say it was around a $25 profit for the hardcovers this time around. Obviously, that just kind of varies on the book and how you price it and whatever. It's a little bit less. It's more like maybe around 9 or 10 for the paperback, which is still, though, like obviously loads better than selling on the Zon or whatever, right? Like it's so much better. What was Ari's question? I missed it.
their question was about TikTok engagement. Did you find that there was a correlation between your TikTok engagement and followers, pledgers on the Kickstarter?
So this time around, yes. This time around, I just went live all the time and held up the pretty book. I did that because I got a proof before the campaign started. So I was able to do that. It definitely helped this time around. However, My last Kickstarter, my second one, where I still raised $12,000, I didn't get a proof first. I didn't go live all the time and trying to sell it, and I still raised $12,000. So it can definitely be helpful, especially if you're good at talking to people and selling things, right? But it's not necessary because I definitely did not do that at all with my second campaign, and I still raised over $10,000. I guess I'm asking, are you making more or less on those books you sold on Chaos as opposed to direct? More. But that's partly because I don't. Um, Part of the lure for Kickstarters is, or part of, okay, how do I say this? One fun thing you can do is you can make it like a Kickstarter exclusive special edition. I tend to do that. I don't want to stock a bunch of special editions in my house and sell them on my website. I don't have, I can't. I don't have the wherewithal for that. I don't have the space, whatever. Now, some people do print runs and they do stock a whole bunch of books and they sell those, in TikTok Shop or on their website or whatever. So you don't have to do a Kickstarter exclusive, but I don't sell my special editions directly. So I can't really like make that comparison. I would say if you did, I would imagine that you would make a little bit more selling them directly because you're not paying like the Kickstarter 5% fee, right? So since you're not paying their fees, you would make a little bit more, but you also wouldn't be on their platform and getting that audience, right? Which is a huge, huge thing.
Kara, can you talk about the difference of engagement on TikTok? Because A-Ray is saying they're not seeing a lot of engagement on their posts. Um, Also having a hard time getting people to follow them, but that's not necessarily how you were getting engagement is, I mean, yes, you get engagement from your followers, but posts engagement versus doing the lives, I think would be helpful for would be
Okay.
helpful information for everyone.
So, like I said, last time for my second Kickstarter, I didn't do all the lives and I still raised a lot of money. So you don't have to do that. Um, you have your newsletter, hopefully, and then you do get a lot of backers just from the Kickstarter site, brand new people to you. However, if you're wanting to engage on social media and you're wanting to try going live and doing all that stuff, it was very effective for me. Again, if you really need the physical book. And in that way, it was much more effective than any videos I posted because I think people just really love seeing the physical book as opposed to a picture of it. That just worked better. And I will also say, A-Ray, she came in on several of my lives during that 3 weeks when I went live almost every day. I got so many new followers just sitting there holding up the book and talking about it. So many. Like I would usually be on from 1 to 2 hours, usually 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I would come away with anything from 15 to 40 new followers. And in that 3 weeks, just that 3 weeks, I gained over 500 new followers. And most of those were from lives. I was not expecting that at all. That was wild. But I definitely, going live definitely got me way more new followers than any of my posts do on a regular basis. So yeah, it helps if you have at least one physical copy. Did you see an increase in sales for other books during Kickstarter campaign? Not really. It was about the same, honestly. I made kind of my usual Amazon sales, but one nice thing that I will mention is that if you have a backlist, which I do, you can sell that on Kickstarter too as like your add-ons, right? So you have your reward tiers that has the main rewards, your special paperback, your special hardcover, whatever it is. But then people can add on other stuff. I sold, okay, let me look at numbers here real quick because it was impressive. For this specific campaign, I didn't do my whole backlist, partly because I made that mistake in my first campaign. And when you have 10 different books you have to format and order and keep track of, it was just too much. It was too much for me. Because you have hardcover and paperback, and then you have all these different books. Anyway, so I only added on Lux's Lullaby trilogy to this campaign because there's some crossover characters. They're both also adult romantasy, right? Like I have some YA stuff. I didn't include that. So I didn't see extra sales necessarily on the Zon or anything, but what I did see was, let me go look at my, I sold 34 of the trilogy of the ebook. I just sold it as a trilogy, not individually. So that's 34 times three, that many books, over 100, ebooks from my backlist. And then I also sold 30 copies of the trilogy in paperback. So that's 90 physical more books that I sold using my backlist. So I wasn't making extra sales on the Zon, but I threw my backlist onto Kickstarter and sold a lot of those books. I also sold audiobooks for that series as well. So yeah, I know it was super awesome. I loved it, especially because that book's done. Like I did make special edition covers, but you don't even have to do that. People sell their backlist like just regular retail stuff all the time. Helps if you can pay for a good cover or have skills up front. It does help. It does help. And there's ways around that too. Like you might find a cover designer who's willing to take payments, for example. So you can, pay them a deposit up front and then pay them the rest after the Kickstarter is over. Let's see. I'm going to go over just some basic things to keep in mind if you're thinking about doing this. Just like some core tips that I see come up all the time in like the Facebook for Authors group and things like that. One thing is when you're doing your very first campaign, I wouldn't set the goal super high. I made that mistake. I didn't listen to that on my first one. I barely funded by the skin of my teeth. Generally they advise, like for your first Kickstarter under $1,000 as your goal. Now that's not to say the other saying that we use a lot is that's a floor, not a ceiling, right? Like you're hoping to make at least that much and you'll probably make more. But don't set a super high goal for your very first one. The other piece around that is kind of the psychology of like people on Kickstarter seem to see a fully funded campaign and get more excited to pledge for it. I don't know what that's about. That's just how it is. I think it's partly because if you don't reach your goal on Kickstarter, you don't get any of the money and no one gets any of the rewards, right? Like the backers aren't charged, you don't get any money. So if you're trying to raise $5,000 and you raise 490, you get nothing and the backers get nothing. Obviously they're not charged, but like, it's not, that's not fun. So backers do like to fund campaigns that are fully funded already because they know they're going to get their stuff. And then I think it's just something of like the FOMO mentality, right? They're like, oh, well, everyone loves this campaign. I need this book too. So that's another reason to set a lower goal. So like for my second and third campaign, for my second, I asked for like 500. I knew I could easily do 500 just based on my like core group of readers, newsletter people. For my second one or for my third one, I set a goal of 700. And I did that on purpose, like knowing that I really needed more than $500 or $700 because I'm using these personally to pay for audiobooks. So I needed more than that. But I learned the lesson of it's better to set the goal low and get people all psyched and excited and maybe get that project we love if you fund really fast, if that's even a factor, we don't know. And then it'll do even better. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive. And a lot of people are like, well, but I need to make at least $5,000 in order to pay my editor or in order to pay my narrator or whatever. But setting your first campaign at $5,000 is not the way to go. Trust me, because I made that mistake. But having a campaign or having two campaigns that both funded within like 10 minutes, everyone got super excited. And then you can also start rolling out like stretch rewards and things like that. So that's the first piece of advice, is set a lower goal for your very first one. I already talked about not treating it like a GoFundMe. Kickstarter is a very visual platform and people, they want the pretty book, but also it's important that your campaign page looks nice. So like Canva is your friend. And if you're not great at graphics and things like that, maybe ask a friend for help who's better at it. And just make your campaign look really nice and make sure you like break up any big blocks of text with some kind of images. It could just be a trope map. It could be whatever, but you want to break it all up. You want to make it look really sleek and professional and pretty and nice. And that will make a big difference too. How do I come up with stretch rewards? Everyone does it. First of all, some people don't do stretch rewards at all. It's optional. You don't have to do stretch rewards. Um, I will say that if you're going to do stretch rewards, and if those stretch rewards are going to be like upgrades on the book or anything else physical that's going to cost you more money, you really need to actually have already built that in to your tier price if you still want to make the profit that you were hoping to make, the same profit margin. So, if you want maybe to offer like a vellum overlay insert as a stretch reward, you want to have that already built in to the like hardcover price that you're going to put the vellum overlay with. And they're only like $1, but like just account for that when you're doing your original spreadsheet and your math and everything. You want to build the price of those stretch rewards into your tiers. But also, you don't have to do physical stretch rewards. You don't have to do stretch rewards that cost you extra money, like, illustrations in the book or different things like that. You can do things like deleted scenes. You can do, if you have a backlist, you could do like a free ebook. You could do, a bonus short story. Like I think on my last one, some of my stretch rewards included a bonus spicy scene, a bonus short story, a sneak preview into book 2 of the duology, things like that. So some of them were physical things, but some of them were things that will take me time but won't cost me money out of pocket. Hi, Amy. Let me know if you want to come up too. I wasn't sure what you wanted to do tonight. Okay, so set a low goal. Make your campaign pretty. Oh, so here's the other thing. Sure? Okay. Let me invite you. Let me invite you. Okay.
So real quick, A-Ray, a backlist means books you've already written and published. So Kara, for example, I think has 11 books that she's written and published. Her backlist is everything she's published before, Token of a Wolf, which she's trying to do a Kickstarter right now for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just your back catalog. How are you, Amy?
I'm good. How are you?
Hi, Vermilion. I'm good. So Reagan, she said if I wanted to do other physical things, you'd recommend doing those as tiers. Not necessarily. What I want you to do is I want you to build the cost into your tier. So you don't have to, like, if you want the vellum overlay page, you don't have to include that in the tier. You can make that a stretch reward. But like, say you set your goal for 500 and you end up raising that, and then you get to 600. Then you can announce like, hey, you guys get a vellum overlay. But you've already accounted for that extra dollar in the stretch reward for the hardcover, just when you do your math at the beginning. I don't know if that makes sense. You want to build those costs in as best you can. That is one kind of mistake I made with my second Kickstarter is it went crazy. I thought maybe I would make tops $3,000 on that campaign, and then I ended up at 12K. And so I went a little crazy with the stretch rewards because it was exciting and everyone, was pledging, and I was like, oh, I should offer these awesome people more things. But I offered them things I hadn't necessarily built in to my original cost sheet, and it ended up cutting more into the profits than I would. It was not ideal. Other physical, you can do that either way. You can do that as a stretch reward, or you can do it as add-ons. As far as other physical items that aren't in the book, you could do the stretch reward. You could do add-on. You can also do a stretch reward. I've seen people do this where the stretch reward is that you have a new add-on to offer to them. So the reward is, look, you can now also add on this candle for $5 or whatever. There's all different ways to do it. Did I miss any questions?
I have tons of questions, so if there aren't any, let me know.
Go for it, Amy.
Wait, are there any questions in the comments?
I think
I'm
we're good
baking
right
bread at this moment. I got my timing a little bit wrong because I have time blindness right now. So I'm not watching the chat.
No worries. A-Ray said it's like working with a credit card. Make sure you have the money to back it up before you spend it. Yeah, exactly that. I definitely cut into my profits, which I still had enough money for the audiobook, but like some of the extra profit was supposed to go into our savings account to save it to pay like taxes and things, and didn't end up getting as much of that as I would have liked. because I went a little crazy with the stretch rewards. So I was much more careful with that with this campaign.
Did you figure taxes into your whole pricing structure? Did you figure taxes into your whole pricing structure?
Yes. I did briefly mention that, Amy, at the beginning, which is just that I'm not going to talk a lot about taxes because I'm not, that's not my expertise, and it depends on like which state and which country you're in. So it gets complicated. But Kickstarter, when you're building your campaign, Kickstarter has a calculator. You can pick a percentage. Like it has a calculator just to kind of help you estimate how much, you might want to raise, where you might want to set your funding goal. And so if you want to, account for like 30% taxes or however much you want to do, it'll help you figure that out. But you also, can just do that in your own little math spreadsheets when you're preparing everything. Yeah. Any other questions?
Absolutely. So talk to me about your first Kickstarter and where you got the balls to do it. Because like I'm looking like like I do okay, right? I'm on book
Mhm.
8. My income fluctuates, obviously. I have like 1,200 people on my newsletter list, a Facebook group with like 1,000 people in it, and I still think I am too small to do a Kickstarter. I'm
You are
terrified.
definitely not, because I did not have, probably when I did my first Kickstarter, I had under 500 people on my newsletter list. Um, Jack Ann, I will get to your printer question in just a second. So you just have to be willing to fail. And as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you know that. Worst case scenario, it doesn't fund. There's
Oh,
no penalty for that.
oh,
There's no
that
penalty for
feels.
that other than
I get
the
it.
penalty we give ourselves.
Yeah.
uh,
Uh-huh.
so you just have to be willing to say what the heck, because the thing is, it doesn't cost anything to set up the Kickstarter doesn't charge you a dime unless you fund, unless you meet your goal and fund, and then at the end of the campaign they charge everyone, they take their 5%, etc. But just to set it up doesn't cost anything. You can set it up,
Okay.
launch it, and if
Uh-huh.
you don't fund it, then you go hide in your bedroom for a few days and feel bad about it, and then you set up a better one and try again in a few months.
Okay, so like would would it behoove you to set a really small goal then, to make sure that it gets funded?
Exactly. Yeah. So one of my pieces of advice that I mentioned is, especially for your first one, to set a small goal. Plan on using for your first one a print on demand printer so you don't have to buy, unless you have the money to buy 300 books in a print run and you don't have to sell them all right away. If you have that capital, like great, whatever. I don't. So I intend to use print run or POD printers until I'm confident I can sell at least 300 books in a Kickstarter. But yeah, it's best to do. The recommended amount is usually like 500. Definitely stay under 1,000,
Mm-hmm.
because if it funds fast, that also gets more people excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
People get
And
FOMO.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you did okay, so you did your 3 Kickstarters for brand new books, not special editions for books that already existed.
No, I will. It was kind of a combination. I'll clarify that, but I'm gonna answer Jack Ann's question really quick so I don't forget about it. As far as how to narrow down your printer, if you want to do special fun things like foiling and sprayed edges, and you want to be able to do that, all your printer to just do all of that without you having to source out, there aren't very many options. So it's not that hard to choose. Most POD printers don't have all the fancy options. Now, if you don't want fancy options, then you have a plethora of choices, and you get quotes, and you know, look at reviews, and you pick. But for all the fancy options, there aren't that many choices. So you're going to choose between like Book Vault, 48-hour print. Book Vault UK is actually better priced than 48-hour print, which is a US company. And then the newest one just coming onto the American market is, hi Audrey, is Books Factory, also in the UK. But they just started doing business with US customers. So yeah, Book Vault, 48 Hour Print, and Books Factory are, there's only a handful of ones that do the fancy things. So if you don't care about fancy things, obviously you could have Ingram do it. You could have anyone do it, right? Uh, there's lots of choices if you don't want fancy stuff, but if you want a special edition, there aren't that many choices. So Amy, for my first Kickstarter, um, it was a new series, and I did it for the whole series, which is another kind of mistake I made. I would definitely recommend doing one book at a time. Um, and then for my second Kickstarter, it was a special edition of a book that had already been out for a while. And then this third one was for another brand new book. Next
Have you
question.
done audiobooks yet?
Yeah, I've done several. So that's how I'm funding my audiobooks. That's what I personally spend my Kickstarter money, my profits on. Um, my first Kickstarter funded Lux in Between. My second one funded Lux and Quest. And this one that I just did is going to do book 3 in that trilogy, Lux and Arms. I also have 3 audiobooks done through ACX for Royalty Share Plus, but that's a separate thing, obviously.
And so let's say I want to do an audiobook for one of my books, right? Um, uh, did you go out and like get your narrators first and then fund your Kickstarter?
Yeah. So let me talk about let's talk about the audiobook thing in general because I feel like that's a reason a lot of authors want to do Kickstarter. Um, so okay, sorry, I got distracted because I saw a question in the comments. It is it's hard to do a Kickstarter that is focused on the audiobook. So a lot of
Say more
it,
about that.
if you go and search the Kickstarter site for audiobook, a lot of those are failed campaigns. My very first one, I did focus on the audiobook. I pivoted mid-campaign and started focusing on the hardbacks instead and not talking about the audiobook as much, and that's probably why I barely funded at all.
Why do you think that
Audiobook
is?
campaigns, straight audiobook campaigns do not do great on Kickstarter.
Okay.
So what I was saying earlier, I think it was before you were here, but it's like Kickstarter backers don't care what you're spending your profit on. Spend it on the audiobook, spend it on editor, spend it on a vacation. Like they don't care. So you can raise your money for whatever you want, but I would not focus on that kind of mentality of like, help me raise money to pay for my editor or for this audiobook. I'll say it again just because it's really good information and not everyone was here. But what Kickstarter backers, book backers want is they want hardbacks more than anything. Second is paperbacks. Third is ebooks. Fourth is audiobooks.
Wait, say that again. Hardback, paperback.
Hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook is last as far as those formats and as far as Kickstarter interest. So if you want to do a campaign so that you can fund an audiobook, that's fantastic and that's great. Don't make that the focus of your campaign. Focus on the story, focus on the actual physical book, whether it's special editions or not, you know, like it doesn't really matter, but on what they're going to be getting physically. And then you use that money for whatever you want. And you can mention an audiobook and you can say, you know, but I would put that like at the end of the story portion of your campaign, like if all goes well, I'll be producing an audiobook of this book or some other book, right? Because like I did this campaign for Token of a Wolf, but it's paying for a Lux audiobook. So I offered the Lux 3 audiobook as like a pre-order in my add-ons, but I otherwise did not even mention it at all because they just want to know about the story and the physical whatever that they're going to buy and receive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so okay. So I have like the second book I wrote does really well, right? It has done really well, continues to do really well. It's in a shared universe with other people, right? Not just myself. So you're saying don't do a Kickstarter for just that audiobook.
Do not do a Kickstarter where you say this is an audiobook for whatever your title is.
Uh-huh.
Don't make that be your title. Don't put audiobook on your banner. Put, this is a Kickstarter for a special edition of this book with foiled blah 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 and sprayed edges. And then talk about your story and your characters and then the physical aspects of the book. Don't say, I'm doing this Kickstarter to raise money for an audiobook. They don't care. You can offer the audiobook as a add-on or as a tier if you're confident that it's going to get made, right? Like regardless of the outcome of the Kickstarter. If you're confident that that audiobook's getting made regardless, you can offer it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even offer it. I would just run the campaign for a special edition of that book. And then the benefit is if you don't make enough that time to get your audiobook, like maybe you need $4,000 and you end up with $2,000 profit. Just set that $2,000 aside if you don't need it for anything else. And in a few months, do a different special edition for a different book because you said you have 8 books. Make another $2,000 and then get your audiobook done.
Okay, all right. Let's switch. Let's take a break and answer any questions that are in the comments.
Okay.
Because again, I'm not reading those.
Yep. You're welcome, Jack Ann.
There was a general question about what is Kickstarter. I don't know how serious that question was, but if there is anyone here that doesn't know what Kickstarter is, could we give an overview?
Yes. So Jack Ann said, basically focus on what the backers are getting, not what you're hoping to gain. That's exactly, very succinct. Perfect, Jack Ann. Yeah, focus on the amazing rewards that you're going to make for these backers, not on what you want to get out of it. That's exactly it. 100%. So the brief overview is Kickstarter is a crowdfunding campaign for creators. There's all sorts of products on it, from new tech to board games to books. And it is a retail website. And the way it's set up is that a creator makes a campaign, you launch your campaign, you have a certain funding goal. Again, guys, don't set that funding goal super high your first time. So you have your funding goal, and then you also have a duration that the campaign lasts, which is anywhere from 1 to 60 days. This is another piece to touch on, is that 60 days isn't actually great. Like, you don't necessarily, a lot of people assume that like longer is better. It's not. I can talk about that more if anyone's interested. But once your campaign ends, if you've met your funding goal, then you get the money minus Kickstarter fees and things. You order the product, get the product out to the backers. So that's what Kickstarter is. What else was I going to say? Oh no, let's talk about that time frame though, because that is an important piece. So like I said, your Kickstarter can be anywhere from 1 to 60 days. I think I ran my first one for 30, which is long. Guys, it doesn't sound long. It feels long. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of like mental energy to be running a Kickstarter and marketing it the whole time and all of that stuff. So there's that aspect. But the other aspect is that, like, you don't want to do that to yourself for 60 days. That's one aspect. But the other aspect is that most campaigns, or I would say the majority, like over 50% at least, have what they call the saggy middle. And that just means that like you're going to get the majority of your pledges in the first few days and the last few days. And when you stretch your campaign out and make it 45 or 60 days or whatever, you're really just extending that saggy middle. That's all you're really doing. There's no evidence that shows a longer campaign is going to make more. There's actually evidence counter to that. So the ideal Kickstarter length is anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Some people say 3 weeks is the magic spot, right? I did my last 2 for 3 weeks, and in that 3 weeks raised, again, in the 5 figures. You don't have to do it. I definitely wouldn't do longer than 30 days, period. Like, don't do it. It's not going to help you like you think it might. And it's also going to drive you crazy in the meantime. What would be funding the campaign? General public. Yeah, it's just a retail site, Casey. So people go on Kickstarter to shop. And
is that where you found all of your initial backers? Like, how did you market it and get your first Kickstarter funded?
My very first Kickstarter, again, was not typical and not ideal. So that one was actually funded mostly by my people, my newsletter people, my followers, etc. That's not actually very common. Usually a large portion of your campaign is going to be funded by brand new to you readers on Kickstarter. Readers slash book collectors, right? Or book dragons.
So like just to say what you just said in completely different language, the majority of people who back Kickstarter are people who go to Kickstarter and are just scrolling through it like a marketplace.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe not even the majority, but I would say it's a good chunk, right? Like it's at least 40%, if not more. And that does, though, vary by campaign. But you're going to get a huge chunk of your pledges typically off of that Kickstarter website, which is why it's important to have your page set up as a beautiful retail thing where you're selling them your story, you're selling them the book, right? Because they're shopping. That's what they're doing. So you need to sell them your story and you need to sell them the physical product or whatever. An author recently raised like 45K. Can you cap your campaign? You can end your campaign early, Jackanne, but that's actually something I would have to look up. I feel like if you end it early, you're essentially canceling it and then you wouldn't get any of the funds. So I don't think you can cap it. I know like Paula Lafferty like went viral on TikTok and then raised like $60,000 for her debut novel. First of all, don't expect to do that. That's not typical, but obviously it can happen. But no, I don't think you can cap it. I will have to look that up, Jackanne. I'm going to make a little note because I feel like the only way to cap it would be to end the campaign early, but I'm pretty sure if you end it early, you're just canceling it entirely. So I'm going to jot that down and look that up because I'm not totally sure. I can't even fathom seeing that much money in my bank account. Yeah. No, guys, like in my second campaign, when it funded, so much more than my first one, I was shocked, utterly shocked. Like I was like, when it hit 10,000, I was like, what alternate dimension am I in right now? And that's not 45 or 60K or whatever. Like for me, just 10,000 was crazy. It was crazy. Right. Did I miss any questions? No.
Oh, I can keep going with questions. So just let me know.
I was just double checking because it's hard to. Yeah. What's your next one, Amy?
Yeah. So how did you pick like your rewards? Like what people got for each tier.
Your reward is a book. So what do you mean by that specifically?
Well, like stretch goals, different things that you offered in different tiers.
Okay.
Like how did you figure that out, structure it, price it?
Okay. So this also will vary a lot depending on the author and the Kickstarter. Oh, sorry, Reagan. I am going to try to post this on YouTube. I'm going to do my best, y'all. I don't do YouTube, but I'm going to try. I do have a channel. What I like to do personally, and again, not everyone does this, is I like to have tiers, like an ebook only tier that's like $5. I like to have tiers that all, or not all, but like most people can handle, can afford, right? That like there's a little something for everyone. That's what I personally like to do. I do like a ebook only, and then I do like a little digital book box. And so, people that can't afford the $65 hardback, like I get that. I can't either. I wish I could buy all the gorgeous books. I don't have that kind of income right now. So I like to do tiers like that and then just go up from there. So hi, Zelda. Now, some people, though, in order to do that, specifically to have an ebook tier, your book can't be in KU, right? So I just usually don't have my books in KU. They were in KU last year. I took them out in December when the 90-day period ended so that I could have them in this Kickstarter as add-ons. Like the Lux's Lullaby trilogy was an add-on. Some creators, though, don't take them out of KU, and so they just don't have an ebook tier. So their tier starts at a paperback. Their reward tiers start at nothing digital because they can't do, or they might do digital, but if they do digital, it's just like digital swag. It's like you can get digital character art and phone wallpaper and whatever else, right? Like printable coloring sheets. So like they might do something like that if they want to do a digital tier, but they don't do the ebook because they don't want to pull it from KU.
So if you're doing a special edition for a book that already exists, that people can just go on Amazon and buy today, they will still buy the digital version from you in the Kickstarter?
Yeah, because these are people that don't even know that you exist until they find you on Kickstarter.
And then how did you deliver the ebook?
Book funnel.
Okay.
I think that's how most authors do it. I know some people, maybe use Google Drive or try to do different things like that, but I think most of the authors that I've paid any attention to as far as digital delivery use book funnel.
Okay. And like knowing everything you know now, right? Having done 3 successful Kickstarters, if you were to do this all over again with the knowledge that you have, would you have started with a special edition for a book that already exists or for a new book that you're about to put out?
For my very first campaign?
Yeah.
So I did my very first campaign right before the first book in Lux came out. And I did it for the whole trilogy because they were all written at that point, right? I did it for the whole trilogy, and then I also had my other books as add-ons, and I basically just put all my eggs in one basket because I was like, this is the only way I'm going to make 5K, which is what I set my goal. Like I did all the things wrong with my first one. What I would do differently now is basically what I'm doing like with Token of a Wolf, which is that I'm doing it book by book. So book 1 just happened. Book 2 will be like late summer, a separate campaign, and book 1 will be available during that campaign as well, right? So for the first one, I would have done just a Kickstarter I would have had to push out the actual publication dates, right? Because one thing is that if it is a new book, Kickstarter backers kind of like to get that book before it's published widely. Because that's another, like to answer your question about like why they could just go buy it on Amazon. If you're doing a new book, you can say, oh, but you're going to get it early before it's on Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. So I would have had to push the Lux publishing dates out, but I would have done one for book 1 and then book 2 and then book 3, 4 to 6 months apart for each one, and done it like that. But I didn't listen to good advice.
Could you talk a second about why you choose BookFunnel to distribute versus a commenter? I think it was A-Ray said that they distribute theirs with Google Docs.
I can answer that question.
I feel like BookFunnel just makes it easier. Like a lot of backers, if they go download an EPUB on Google Docs, they don't even know how to get it onto their Kindle. If you go to BookFunnel and download it, it asks you like, do you want this on your Kindle? Do you want it on BookFunnel? It like just walks you through the whole process, right? So it's just a little more user friendly in that way, in my opinion. What were you going to say, Amy?
Because BookFunnel handles the customer service.
Yeah.
If somebody can't figure out how to get the book from BookFunnel, they go to BookFunnel to answer that question, not to you usually.
Right. It's just more, it's more user friendly. It's also nice because BookFunnel will show you all these statistics. They'll show you how many people downloaded. They'll show, you know what I mean? Like they'll show you all this other information. Go ahead, Amy.
And you get their email addresses. Like you can hook it into your email marketing service or just create an Excel file, and
Right.
you get to own all of those email addresses so you can communicate with those people further. I mean, of course you will in Kickstarter itself too, but BookFunnel is I think it's a must-have tool for anyone who is publishing more than one book.
For BookFunnel specifically. Now, I do want to make a mention of Kickstarter and email addresses because you do have to be careful with that. So you can't just like take your Kickstarter backers' email addresses and add them to your newsletter without their permission. Same thing.
Absolutely.
Like, if they're going to go download your book on BookFunnel, you can ask them to sign up for your newsletter, but I think it's kind of not best practice to like make them sign up for your newsletter to get something.
No, you absolutely can.
I just want to clarify that because I've seen people in the Kickstarter group be like, okay, I can just put all these email addresses on my newsletter now, right? It's like, no, you cannot do that. What you can do is in your survey, which after the campaign ends, Kickstarter doesn't like collect everyone's shipping address or any of that stuff. after the campaign ends, you're going to send out a survey to people, and you're going to ask questions like, if you're signing the books, you're going to maybe ask like, what name do you want it made out to? It's going to collect their shipping address if necessary, but then you can also add a question of, hey, do you want to subscribe to my awesome newsletter, right? And do it like that. And if they say yes, then you can do it. But just so everyone knows that. I figured you knew that, Amy, but it just made me remember an important piece.
And just for anybody listening, it's a law thing, right? It is technically illegal to just collect email addresses out in the ether without informed consent by the person signing up that they will be receiving marketing material from you. And Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, BookFunnel has a whole section where it will pop up saying, I understand that I'm signing up for a newsletter by getting this free book. That's completely kosher.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So that's completely kosher, and it's a great way to collect email addresses to further communicate with people. But like, don't be CC people. Don't be that person out there in the world who's just using your Google email address to send marketing shit, because that's very illegal.
Right, very illegal, and also just rude, right? Like, it's
Correct.
just not polite.
Correct.
What I like about BookFunnel, I was going to say, is that you can make it an option, right? So you can, like, with BookFunnel, you can do just a straight download. They don't have to provide anything. Or you can do a download where they have to sign up for your newsletter. But you can also do one where it's optional. You can just give them the choice. They can download the book and they can say yes or no. And they get the book regardless. But I kind of like that option.
So there's a question here. Can you transfer your Google Doc to BookFunnel? So BookFunnel is its own thing. You can't like directly transfer from a Google Doc. It has to be in an EPUB or a PDF format that you then upload to BookFunnel, because it is an ebook. Like a Google Doc does not work inside the technology that e-readers utilize, right? It's like a different format. Like when you have a Word document, it's .docs, right? It's kind of the same thing. So books are saved as an EPUB file or as a PDF. So yes, you can transfer a document from Google Docs, but it has to be either in an EPUB format or a PDF format. And Google Docs will not let you save as an EPUB. That is a whole separate entity. It's a whole separate thing.
Right. BookFunnel is a distribution and sales platform, not like a formatting, or they don't have anything built in to like Amy said. It has to already be ready in that way.
So I want to go off of something A-Ray said, if we have just a second. So I misquoted them. I apologize. They were saying that they use Google Drive to distribute their digital rewards. So not necessarily the ebook, but like if they have a digital kit to send.
Yes. And I will use Google Drive for that. I will just do a file in Google Drive and share it with people. If it's like you can do it on BookFunnel, but you have to do it as PDF, right? And so if you wanted to do like PNG or something instead, then you would use something like Google Drive.
Okay, that's good to know too.
But you can also manage that through BookFunnel by creating a PDF that says, here's your link to the Google Drive to get your digital book box. So that way you're still compliant with collecting people's email addresses in the preferred format. And this is important for me. It helps you like streamline your business process, because I know like I can get carried away, and like I have a single manuscript that's in 4 different locations, right? Because I write in different places sometimes. So part of it is in Scrivener, part of it is in Google Docs, part of it is on my phone inside Word, right? So the more you can streamline your process and only use one service, I think the better off you can be, because then you just have to go to one place to see how everything is doing.
Yeah. It is nice. A digital book box, David, can be really anything. For me, what that means is you get the ebook, but then you also get like maybe printable coloring pages, character art digitally. I also sometimes do like phone and computer wallpapers, things like that, like any digital goodies you can think of to go with your book. And it's just kind of a nice way. One nice thing about doing digital goodies like that is some international backers might want to support your campaign, but they can't necessarily afford the shipping, right? That's assuming you even want to ship internationally. You don't have to. But even if you want to ship internationally, you know, it can cost $20 to $30 to send it to wherever, like Australia, and not everyone wants to pay the cost of a special edition plus $30 shipping. Can't blame them, but they can still kind of have some of the fun like book box stuff, but they just get it digitally. And if they, you know, if they want to, they can. I do like a digital bookmark too. So if they want to, they could go print the bookmark and print the character art if they wanted to. Obviously, they're not supposed to like go sell it, but they can have those goodies without paying all that shipping. So we've covered a lot. Any other questions? I think what else I haven't talked about.
Maybe you could talk about someone who's never seen the Kickstarter platform. Like, what is that experience like to set up a first time Kickstarter? What are the steps? What does that look like if I've never seen the website before?
Let me pull it up really quick, just because, again, this poor memory. So when you start, it's really like it really walks you through. It's a pretty like user friendly setup. But you're basically going to start, they're going to ask you to like upload a banner. You can skip that part if you need to and upload it later. Oh, but this also remind me, Ash, when I finish this piece to talk about pre-launch. I don't want to forget to talk about pre-launch. You enter like what you want your funding goal to be. That can be adjusted, you know, as it can be adjusted up until you launch the campaign. Once you launch the campaign, you can't change your funding goal. But just as you're setting up, you know, maybe you think you want to do 300 and then you decide to do 500 or something. You can go back and change that. You can edit everything up until you launch it. And then after that, you can only edit certain things. So even if it's in pre-launch, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can still edit stuff, everything in the campaign. So it's going to kind of walk you through basically setting up rewards. So for reward tiers, you have to do a couple of things. You have to set up specific items. So like that might be the ebook, the paperback, character art, like separate items, right? And then you're going to set up your reward tiers, and you will specify the price for the tier. And then you're going to specify which of those items that you've set up are going to be in that tier. You know, put in your shipping information, things like that. There's also ways to do it so that certain tiers are only available for a certain amount of time. So like you can set the tier to expire after the first two days. Some people do early bird deal kind of things, right? So you can do stuff like that, setting up your tiers by just having that tier end, you know, a certain amount of days into the campaign and not be available anymore. So you're trying to market and get people to come pledge right away because they can get this great early bird deal. So you can set up everything like that. So you set up your items, you set up your reward tiers. You don't have to put pictures or anything in initially. You're going to want to before you launch. But when you're just first setting up, you can just put in text and just, you know, get it all set up and figure out your pricing and figure out what tiers you want and all that kind of thing. And then you're going to do your story. They call it the story. And the story is like, basically, if you go on a Kickstarter page and you see all the information about the book and you're scrolling down and reading about the story and reading about, you know, the features of the book, etc., that's your story section in Kickstarter. That's what they call it. So you're going to go into your story and you're going to set up your story. That's where you're going to do, put all your copy, your sales stuff, right? Your sales writing, your graphics, your mock-ups, all that kind of stuff. The story is probably one of the most important pieces of it because that's your main like sales landing page, basically. Like when people go to your campaign, they're going to land on the story first, and rewards is like a different tab. But also you want to outline your rewards in your story. Not everyone does that, but it just, especially like for mobile users, that's easier for them to see it all laid out like that. So then you set up all your story stuff. Hold on, let me go look at a campaign that I'm setting up still so I can remember what else. Okay, so you do your basics, which is like your banner and your funding goal. You do your rewards, you do your story. You then will have to also set up like your payment stuff. So where is the money going to be deposited? They'll need to verify your bank account. That might take a few minutes to like a day. I don't remember. But you definitely want to do that like well ahead of actually launching to make sure that's all set up and good to go. And they're able to connect to wherever you want the money deposited. So you got to set all that up. And then once you have all that set up, you can submit it for review. And so this is when it would go, you have the option of putting it into pre-launch. So first you set it, you turn it in for review. Now the review process with Kickstarter, it's sometimes they will approve it instantly. Sometimes they'll take a couple of days. I don't know why, but that's just how it works. And they can reject your campaign. And that just means there might be something specific you have to go make edits, in the campaign for. So one thing to be careful of is, say, like for Amy, she has books that are already published. She can't just go on Kickstarter and take her retail copy of her book that's already available on Amazon and sell that on Kickstarter. Kickstarter has to be new products. It can be a book that's already published, but it has to be a new edition with new things, right? Like that. Maybe that's just a new cover. Maybe that's a bonus chapter. There's got to be something new and special about it, or Kickstarter will not approve it. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. And then you also just want to have, enough information in there that they see that you have your reward tiers figured out and all of that. Now, what I will say is you don't have to have all of this completely done and perfect when you submit it for review. You need the basics. You need you need the rough draft, right? You need the rough draft done, but it does not need to be perfect. What you want to do is once you have that rough draft, you want to submit it for review, because once it's approved, you can put it into pre-launch phase. Pre-launch phase is important. And in pre-launch, people can't see the whole campaign. They can only see what you want. They see like the banner and your like basic title and tagline or whatever. And then the new pre-launch pages, you can kind of do like story stuff in it. You can put some graphics and do some description. You can put your blurb or whatever. But the pre-launch page, they're only seeing whatever you want them to see of that. They're not seeing your whole campaign. But this is where you gain pre-launch followers. And getting pre-launch followers is just people will go and they'll click notify me when this campaign launches, and Kickstarter will email them when your campaign launches. You want to do a minimum of a 30-day pre-launch period. Longer is better though. Some people do like a full year of pre-launch. This last time I did like 3.5 months. Minimum 30 days. Also, if you're wanting to make at least, $500 to $1,000, I would say try to get a minimum of 50 pre-launch followers. And again, the way to do this is your newsletter and your marketing and et cetera, and get people all excited about this campaign. You can also, if you're going to do like early bird specials, you can mention that and be like, you want to be notified right when this launches because this early bird special will be gone fast or whatever, that kind of thing. So you want to get people to come sign up. I think for my first Kickstarter, I only had about 51 pre-launch followers. So it's kind of I'm still amazed that I managed to fund that thing at 5K. It was a miracle, frankly. But my second one, I had about 150 pre-launch followers. And I think that was like a 2-month pre-launch period. And then my third one, I did the 3.5 months and I had, I don't remember exactly how many, but over 200. Maybe 210 or 220. So that pre-launch phase is very important, and longer is better. And I know, like for me, for my first one, I think I only did the 30 days. I got the minimum kind of 50 followers that people recommend. I know we get like excited and we just want to do it, or at least I do. I get impatient and I'm like, okay, I'm excited. I'm on this, like the campaign's built. Let's go. Be patient. Not my strong suit. But be patient and take the time to get that minimum of 50 followers, even if that takes a couple months. Like, even if you're thinking like, oh, I want to launch this in April, but April rolls around and you only have 15 pre-launch followers, like, just push it. push it a little bit, get some more interest in it, be patient, try to get all of that. Now, all the people that follow you aren't necessarily going to pledge, right? Your conversion rate will vary, but in general, more pre-launch followers is a good indicator of more success. Because even if it's only even if only 25% of them convert, do you want 25% of 50 people to convert, or 25% of 150 people to convert, right? So more pre-launch followers is better. A longer pre-launch period, like I said, minimum 30 days is also ideal. Any other questions? Anyone?
Oh, I totally have questions. I will never not have questions.
I love it. It's good.
How long are you going for first?
Yeah.
Like when are you gonna end this
How long
live?
do we want to?
I figured 2 hours would be plenty. So we still have.
I am crushing a deadline right now, so I'm drinking coffee so I can be up until the wee hours. Would you mind strategizing with me?
Okay.
Like you could say no, right? And I can just ask you more
Oh,
questions
that's
that don't.
fine. I'm down.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, so here's like my own publishing space right now. The first book I did was a vampire story. It sold right? It was part of a planned trilogy that I have not yet wrote the other books to. So that was a year and a half, 2 years ago that I released that. Second book in a shared world with other people. It's a standalone. I am not continuing writing in that world, but that book continues to do really well, like really well, right? Then the rest of my books are in another shared universe with someone else. And I'm releasing like my third book in that series right now. Right. So if I this year, like after I finish this book in that Omegaverse series, I'm going to go back to vampires and work on the vampire trilogy. So here's what I'm thinking with Kickstarter. So I have the vampire book that's already done. It needs a new cover to match the other books. Long story why that is. But that book is live in KU right now. So what if I did a Kickstarter for the new cover of that book and a hardcover version of it, right on the verge of publishing book 2. I would put book 2 into KU for 3 months, pull it out, and then do a Kickstarter for the special edition version of that. Or should I wait, do them back to back? Like when you're in a series, what do you recommend?
So again, this is kind of like you have to be patient, right? So like for my newest duology, I really wanted to do both books together. I was like, they're both going to be drafted by then. I just want to do them both. And everyone in the Kickstarter group was like, do a separate campaign for each book. Also, Kickstarter backers do get excited when it's a brand new book. So I would say do the Kickstarter campaign for book 2 before you launch it publicly. Does that make sense? Before you launch it, why?
Don't do a Kickstarter for book 1.
No, do a Kickstarter for book 1, push out your publishing date for book 2, and do a Kickstarter for book 2 as well. Or if it's about to be published anyway, do a Kickstarter for both. Like include both of them in it. The already published one with a special edition and then the brand new one.
Even though it's only 2 books of a trilogy?
If it was a longer series, I would say for sure. If it's a trilogy, I would honestly just do, like I said, if I could go back and redo my trilogy, I would do a different, I would do a separate campaign for each book. I really would, because every single campaign, you're going to get new and different backers off that Kickstarter platform. Like every single campaign, you're going to get new readers, new exposure. And so in that way, I mean, stress and time and whatever aside, in that way, doing separate campaigns for separate books is going to benefit you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Either that, or if you want to release book 2 before you do a Kickstarter for it, I would wait longer to do the Kickstarter for the special edition for book 2. I would let it be out for a while.
Okay, so to sum up, because this is how I learn best by restating what it is that you said. So what you're recommending is we're going to ignore book 1 for the second. Do a Kickstarter for book 2 and have that go and then put it into KU or put it up into Amazon after
Mhm.
the special edition has already released.
Mhm.
Okay. How, if you're doing it in a series like that, how long do you recommend, or have you heard people recommend that you space out the Kickstarters for books in a series? Like, let's say I had all three of them written right now.
Okay, so it's not just about best practice, it's also about what Kickstarter will let you do.
Right.
So, sorry, I hear the dog scratching at the door. I'm messaging my husband, like, does he need in or out? Um, so once you've done several campaigns and fulfilled them and have good standing with Kickstarter, you can run campaigns close together and or simultaneously, right? Your first few, though, they won't let you launch, even do a pre-launch for a new campaign until your first one is fully fulfilled. So as far as timing, that's a big part that plays into it. You know, I personally, I also don't want my readers, my newsletter people to feel like I'm constantly like, go buy my special edition every other month. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want them to feel like bombarded by that. But also, you just have to take into account the amount of time it's going to take you to fulfill each campaign. And so, in that respect, I would say probably at least 4 months apart, because it can take longer than you think. Because sometimes there's printing delays or shipping delays or whatever. You know, you want to build in like extra time in case things go wrong, because um, things go wrong sometimes, and it's better to build in too much time. It's but you know, like, I think I can probably get a lot of my books out right now for this Kickstarter in April, honestly. Like, I think a lot of them will be able to go out in April if things go smoothly. The the date that I put on Kickstarter was June, because if I get my, first of all, if my books don't come in April, if they're delayed, there's that. Or if they come and there's a bunch of them damaged, that adds another month on, right? Like, depending again on which printer you're using and stuff. But if you're using a printer in the UK, like I am, like, expect it to take at least a month for your books to get there. And then if they get there, either they could be delayed or they get there and they're damaged, like that all adds on extra time. So for me, like, I did the first Kickstarter in February, and the next one is going to be 4 to 5 months later in July. And that's just so that I can make sure that everything is fulfilled in the first one, before I move on. So I would say at least 4 months apart.
Okay, so like timeline wise, you recommend a long pre-order period of multiple months. Then the Kickstarter goes for a month, and then you give yourself a few months to fulfill that Kickstarter.
Yeah.
How long do you give yourself to fulfill the Kickstarter?
So you have to take in mind, okay. So you do your pre-launch period, you do your Kickstarter. I do 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is the magic spot, but you could do it for a month. You have to keep in mind, it takes Kickstarter like a full 2 weeks to transfer the funds to you right off the bat. So unless you have the money to order stuff before those funds come in, you're not going to order anything for at least 2 weeks after the Kickstarter's over. And part of that is because, like, there will be errored pledges, right? Like, backers' payments will be errored, will fail, and Kickstarter is
Right.
going to try to collect those. You're going to try to collect those. Some of them will stay. You'll recover some of it you won't recover. But you want some time to do that, you know.
Right.
And then once Kickstarter transfers you the money, this is assuming again that, like, your book is 100% ready to go, right? Like, everything's done. You can put in your order, and I would estimate it again, if you're getting your book from the UK, that's, figure it's 4 to 6 weeks to get there and to get to you. But also, this is assuming you're having them sent to you and then you're sending them out. So it's a slightly different timeline if you have them drop shipped from the printer, Like if you don't want them to come to you, I want them to come to me because I want to sign them and I also want to quality control them, right? Because POD printers are, even the good ones, it's a mixed bag sometimes. So I want to be able to look at these books before they're sent to customers. But some people can't handle the shipping on their own. And so they just have the printer shipped directly to their customers. And that's going to change your timeline. And I'm honestly not sure how much it would change it because I haven't done it. But so you have 2 weeks till you get your money, 4 to 6 weeks. So we're already at like close to 2 months, right? Before you have your books. And then assuming that all is good and you don't have to get a whole bunch of them replaced, which could take another, however month or whatever, you could start fulfilling. You can sign them, package them, ship them up from there. But if you get them, and there's problems, right? Then you need another month in there to fix those problems. This is also assuming, like in this scenario, for me, I should say this too. In this scenario, I already had gotten a couple of proofs. Some people wait until the Kickstarter is over to get their proofs, and that's just adding on more time. Like if you don't have proofs before your Kickstarter is over, if you don't have a good proof that you're happy with before your Kickstarter is over, add at least another month or two to this timeline, right? Because you're going to get your first proof. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, etc. And that just extends the process. So that is kind of what I did with my first couple ones. And this time I just ordered it, months ahead of time. I ordered the proof. The book wasn't even proofread yet, but it was done enough. And I just wanted to make sure the cover and the interior, you know what I mean? That like everything looked good. Then I had a physical book to hold up. But it also means that when the money transfers to me, I can just order the books. I don't have to order a proof first and then maybe another proof, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so you're looking at basically like from launching your pre-order phase to fulfillment of your books about 6 months.
Yeah.
And for your first Kickstarter will not let you do a second one until you fulfilled your first one. Is that correct?
Yeah, for at least, I want to say they keep that rule in place, I think, until you've done 4. I think that's the rule. Once you've done 4 successful Kickstarters where like you fulfilled and people aren't, a whole bunch of customers aren't mad at you or whatever, like basically you've proven yourself to Kickstarter, then you can have like multiple campaigns and pre-launch simultaneously, or you can like launch a new campaign while you're still fulfilling the old one, etc.
Okay, so timeline wise for my vampire book, if I have the cover redone, get it's already a written book, right? So I can get proofs. I can do all of that stuff, set it up inside Kickstarter, pre-launch it for 3 months, do the Kickstarter, and then wait for the book to come, do the fulfillment. And that'll take about 6 months, and then like I can go through that process again for the second book. So we're looking at a year before I get to the second book. Basically,
in theory,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it could go a little faster, right? But it just, like, you don't have to do 3 months. You could do 2 months pre-launch period, and
right. No, I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, you can truncate that, but generally, like if you're doing
I'm
a
doing
Kickstarter,
2 Kickstarters this year for 2 books in the whole calendar year. Some people do more. I can't imagine really doing more than that because I am doing it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have some questions if we could pivot to that while Amy's doing.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Because Amy has her thinking brain on, I can tell.
I do.
Just for purposes of notes, wanted to ask you, what did you say for the pre-launch period?
Minimum 30 days.
Okay. What would you say is the upper limit? She's 1 to 3 months. Is that what you said? Okay.
No, some people do their pre-launch for like a year. And I haven't studied how well that works. Like, I feel like if I followed a pre-launch page and it launched a year later, I might not be interested in that book anymore. Like, I don't know how well they might get like 500 pre-launch followers, but like over that amount of time, how many people have lost interest or whatever, I don't know. I don't have experience with the super long pre-launches, but some people do that. So there's no maximum for a pre-launch period. There's no rules about it. You can do it for as long as you want. But definitely a minimum a month and a minimum of 50 pre-launch followers. I did like 3.5 months technically this last time, but really after about between the 2.5 and 3 month mark, like I stopped getting more followers.
Interesting. And what does
And
that
that's
pre-launch work look like other than setting up the pre-launch page and obviously like doing some content? I'm looking for just like a quick answer about what does that work look like, I guess. Is it
about
just
getting
posting about it on social media?
it's posting about it, yeah, in my newsletter, right? I send out a monthly newsletter. Some authors, a lot of Kickstarter authors actually do weekly newsletters. I could
Oh, wow.
never, but I do a monthly newsletter, and so it's sending out in that, and it's posting on social media and just all of that. I mean, I have my like street team to help me, not only to like make their own posts, but to go boost my posts, share my posts, all that kind of stuff. That's helpful if you have people who
Okay.
will help you get seen more. But yeah, it's just basically putting it out there. It's marketing your book, right? It's like marketing pre-orders kind of, except they're not ordering it yet. They're just following along so they can order it.
Okay. Maybe that was not the smartest question. I was just like, what does that look like? I don't even
Yeah,
know.
no, yeah. You're just being like, look, and that's at that point, hopefully,
Yeah.
like I said, you have some mock-ups, you have some graphics, you have things that you can be like, this is my story, this is my book.
Great. And then Wolf said, I dislike the notion of making empty promises. When should someone think of a Kickstarter? And I want to ask Wolf to clarify what he means by empty
Yeah.
promises.
I've kind
But
of talked with him a little bit about this
yeah,
privately. Um, you definitely don't want to make empty promises. So you don't want to run a Kickstarter for more than you feel like you can deliver. Um, Bottom barrel port. Yeah, no, that's fair, Wolf. I get it. Um, so there's also a piece of like when you're setting up your Kickstarter and you're doing your story, there's a little section that says risks, and you're supposed to list out any risks, right? And you don't necessarily want to put like, you don't want to make it sound like this really might not happen in that section, right? Basically, if you really think it might not happen, then yeah, you shouldn't be doing it. I would never run a campaign that I didn't think I could fulfill. And that's part of why I say, like, at the beginning, someone asked, I think it was Ella asked, like, do you want to have your book done first? Personally, yes. Because if something happens and I can't finish that book and a bunch of people have paid for that book, like that's horrible to me, right? Like I would feel so bad. So I would want to be ready to deliver. And in that way, like I said, Kickstarter is that retail platform. It's not like GoFundMe, but you could do a GoFundMe for something, like, hey, if you want to help me pay for my cover and my editor, like here's a GoFundMe. It's just a separate platform. There's nothing wrong with it, but I wouldn't use Kickstarter for that. Once you can get your book ready and get the funds to get it ready, then you can do your Kickstarter, right? You definitely don't want to promise anything you can't deliver. I mean, reasonably, right? Like obviously crap happens and you never really know, but that's also part of like when you're building in the extra time. Like when I think I'll be able to send out my books by the end of April, but I put June, I'm just covering my butt in case things go wrong because I don't want to disappoint people and I want them to have, reasonable expectations of what could happen.
and then, oh gosh, I thought I muted myself. Hopefully you didn't hear just like my dog and my children and all that. Sorry. Okay, good. And then I kind of want to address A Ray's comment of like, do you want to look at my pre-launch page and tear it apart? I'm down for that, but I also want A Ray to know that we are going to be doing a regular series where we invite someone like you, A Ray, to come up and say, hey, help me market my stuff. And that could include something like this.
Right.
So I am currently I'm like pitching this, but I don't have the thing. And that sucks. I'm currently working on a Google form and it will live in my links place eventually, and presumably these ladies' links as well, where you can apply to come join us. Not apply,
Kind of.
apply, right? Like we can gather your interest from that form, set up a time to have you on, and do a deep dive.
Right. Also, A Ray, I don't want to look at your pre-launch page. I want to look at your preview page. So make sure you figure out how to get that preview link because your pre-launch page doesn't show most of your campaign. But when you've made your campaign and it's in, even before it's pre-launched, you can generate a preview link when you're in the like the editing mode, there's a preview link you can send out to people and they can look at your entire campaign. Because like in the pre-launch page, you don't see the rewards. There's a lot of stuff you don't see. With the preview link, we can see all of that and give you feedback. I would also post that in the Facebook for Authors group if you're in it. That group will let you post that link one time. They'll let you post a Kickstarter link one time, either the preview link when it's in pre-launch or during your campaign. If you haven't already done it and you're like, oh, wait, I guess I actually might need help because this isn't going well, right? I suggest doing it beforehand, and they will give you lots of good feedback. So if you can, I would also post it there. I'm happy to look at it. I'm only one person, and I'm not, I'm not a 45K 10 Kickstarter person. Like I'm not, I'm sharing what I know because I want to help who I can, but I'm not the ultimate expert at all. So I'd be happy to look at it for you, but there are people even more well-versed in it than I am in that group. If you can post your preview link there, I really, really would. And they might tear it apart a little bit, honestly. Like they'll be nice about it, but they're going to tell you what's wrong with it. And, just try not to take it personally. It's just like getting feedback on your writing, right? Like just take it as it comes. Don't take it personally, and do with it what you will, but it'll be very useful feedback overall. I really do. I know some people don't like Facebook and some people won't be on Facebook, and I get it, but that's the only place that group is. And it's such a big group that even though they've been asked about, like, would you consider moving this to Discord or somewhere else? They're like, we're just a big group of volunteers here that are running it, right? Like all Facebook groups. And we don't have the wherewithal to like make that happen right now. Like this is where we are. Sorry. So I know not everyone wants to be there, but it is a priceless resource. There's also like tons of pinned articles, like tons of information about printers and just so much information, right? But even just posting that preview link and getting their feedback is like worth being in that group just to be able to do that. Because it's very, very helpful.
Amy, just say the comment out loud. I can see you typing.
So this is like Ray and Ray and I are going back and forth. She said, "Can I post my link so that you guys can tear it apart?"
Yeah.
My comment to her was, "We don't tear apart other artists' work." So we're going back and forth a little bit. Language matters, and I don't like to coach my feedback in negative terms that way because tearing something down is actually destroying it rather than helping you create something. So it's just a personal thing that I have. I don't use negative language like that when I'm talking about feedback.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just very well. I will give you constructive feedback
There you
on
go.
your preview, on your preview link whenever you want me to, but I would also advise asking other Kickstarter experienced people for that feedback.
A-Ray, are you on Discord? Is that a platform you use at all? All three of us are on Discord. Kara has her own server. I have a server called The Writing Room that is about writing, where we're kind of like organizing some of these
Marketing
visible
things.
things. Yeah.
And writing group and all that fun stuff.
So if you are a Discord user or that sounds interesting, you could join the Discord. You could share links there. We can all look at them. Our whole community can look at them, provide feedback. And that could be really helpful in addition to talking about it here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For sure, for sure. We would all be happy to do that.
So I have a kind of an off the wall question. If there's no other questions in the comments, I don't think there are.
I think we're good.
How have you seen? I don't even know how to phrase this. Author created artwork go as like add-ons. For example, I spray my own books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these are two of the books that I offer them as like specials for like occasionally. I'll spray a bunch and ship them out to people. And I also like my vampire book has knitting in it.
Mm-hmm.
She's a fiber artist. So I was thinking of having an add-on of like yarn that I've personally dyed myself, right?
Oh yeah, no, totally. Kickstarter backers love really like personalized and handmade and all of that stuff. They love all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you would do that as like add-ons and not as a tier by itself.
I wouldn't do it as a tier by itself, but when you're making your tiers and you're going from smaller to bigger, don't like the worst case scenario is someone doesn't pledge for the highest tier, but make a really high tier, right? Like make a tier that has all the goodies in it with
Mhm.
however much you think that should be worth. And maybe no one will pledge for it, but probably someone will. Like my highest tier with this last one is $350. I was like, probably no one. Three people, I'll take it. you know? Um, but you can also put it as an add-on. You can do both, right? So like if someone just wants to buy the paperback, but then they also want that yarn, cool. But also put it in like this big get everything you possibly can tier. That can also even include like fun things like you get to name a character in my next book, or like non-material things like that. If you want to give them like perks like that, you can do all of that in like a big fancy tier. I would always make a big fancy tier. Worst case, just no one pledges for it, like whatever. But someone
Okay.
might, and that's cool.
Okay. This is my vampire book with the sprayed edges, by the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was debating trying to do sprayed edges for this one, like just solid color sprayed edges. But we'll see.
Okay.
So,
All right. So I'm gonna do a Kickstarter for book one of the Vampire Trilogy. So you've inspired me, and I'm sure I'm gonna have several nervous breakdowns in your private messages.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Your nervous breakdowns are welcome in my DMs. I can handle it. I'm happy to help.
Because I think timeline wise, okay, time. So I have book one done. It'll take 6 months to put that out there. Besides, it'll take longer than 6 months because I have to do all the creation work for a new cover, blah, blah, blah. In that 6 months, I can have book two written. During its pre-launch phase, I can have all the book design done, and like the editing of it done. Um, then have book two done later this year, towards the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then have book three ready to go as soon as book two is done.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I think I might try that. Like,
Patient, right? Like you have to,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I could have just published Token of a Wolf widely and published book two, by the summer or whatever. But you're being patient for that advantage of like the platform, the finding new, putting your book in front of new people. Also, it's just kind of fun to get the opportunity to make like a beautiful special edition, right? But it's also, like I said, just a really good way of getting your book in front of brand new readers that would maybe never find you otherwise. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's a marathon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think I might do that for the Vampire series rather than the Omegaverse stuff because the Omegaverse stuff sells in KU without a problem.
Right.
But I have. We don't need to discuss all my theory and philosophy behind it right now. I'm just talking.
Well, but
to myself
doing
right
that
now.
as a Kickstarter to get a different audience, knowing that when it goes to KU, it will be fine. That's extra revenue. So there's that to think about as well.
Yeah.
Right.
You see, my books weren't getting, they were getting some page reads, but I wasn't making tons of money off KU. So for me, it's not a big deal to pull them off KU. But like I said, some authors leave them in KU and just don't offer an ebook, which is fine.
Oh, I'm
Like,
totally willing. Well, here's the thing. I'm totally willing to take the vampire books out of KU, and even go wide with them. That's fine. When you write an Omegaverse, it's so niche, and almost all of your sales comes from KU. And like, I don't know. I have something like, let me see. Hold on. Like it's hard. It's like because it actually takes money out of your pocket when you take a book out of KU when it's doing well,
oh
right?
yeah,
Like, since I started publishing, I think this is my going into my third year of publishing. I have 4 million page reads, so it's kind of hard to take something out of KU that's already making money.
Right. No, that's fair. Like mine weren't making tons of money, so it's not hard. Like I said, but that's why a lot of authors just don't. They don't take them off KU. They just don't offer an ebook, and that's fine. Because again, in order of what people
Hmm.
want, it's hardbacks and paperbacks first, right? So you're not necessarily going to lose
Hmm.
tons of money. For me, I'm making way more money selling my backlog via ebook on Kickstarter than I was making in KU, but that's not the case for everyone.
Hmm. Hmm.
A-Ray, that's not weird at all. I'm not. I mean, what I'm personally trying to make money for is just going back into my books. It's for audiobooks. And that's to make my books more accessible. And, that is because I just want to share the stories with as many people as possible. So I'm in the same boat as you. It just costs money. It costs money to share our stories. And it costs money to make audiobooks, right? So you gotta be able to get that somehow.
Hmm. I mean, if I could self-fund, like I, because of accessibility, I want audio so, so badly. And, but that's, and I want duet narration, right?
That's the kicker
Which
is
is,
when, yeah, because like I do have three audiobooks with single narration on ACX with Royalty Share Plus. And they're great and that's fine. But like for Lux, I really wanted the duet narration. Like there's three MMCs and I just really, really wanted, a Mask Femme narrator duo. So that costs more and it's not easily done through something like ACX and Royalty Share, right? Because it's not built for
hmm.
more than one narrator per book, etc. It's not set up like that. So,
Hmm.
you know, there's accessibility and then there's but also it's our art and we would like it done a certain way. And where do you decide to draw?
Particularly on something that doesn't guarantee you a return, right? Like audiobooks don't guarantee, are not, like it's hard to profit off of audiobooks.
It's a long-term thing, right? Like I
Hmm.
think over the long term they will pay for themselves, but it's definitely not a, within a month or 6 months or a year type of deal for most of us.
Hmm.
But again, it's not like, yeah, it's a small business, right? But we're also artists and it's also about accessibility. And that
Hmm.
matters too.
Hmm.
Hi, Carlene. Ooh, look, I got a fancy thing.
That was a cool gift.
That was a cool gift. I'm trying to get a computer for a formatting program. Yeah, I hear that. Okay, see, I don't understand why it is. Carlene did two hand hearts and it was like, that's spam. I'm not showing you that. Like,
Yeah, it
what?
filtered a comment from A-Ray earlier too that I couldn't unblock.
Yeah, it is so silly. I don't know what it's
Yeah,
been doing.
it's
It's
fine.
been going crazy.
I like being a moderator. That's nice.
Yeah, we'll do that every time for sure. Because that's why I was like, I want
I
someone else there to help me like keep track of
Yeah.
comments and unblock comments and all that stuff because it's hard for me
absolutely.
to do that while
And it
I'm
was
talking.
clearly needed.
Inside
Yeah,
these marketing talks and these AMAs, I definitely think one of us, somebody should serve as moderator and read the comments and make sure
Mhm.
questions get asked and answered.
agreed. Yeah,
Um, yeah, I definitely think that should
Yeah.
totally be done. And I'm
agreed.
gonna try and go live this week, so that I can like host my own. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens
Good.
there. We'll see.
Yay. That's awesome.
Yeah, even if
Hmm.
you just go live to do some writing sprints, that counts toward your
Hmm.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you don't have to like be, putting on a show or like talking to people the whole time. Writing sprints are a good way to just get some minutes of live in for sure.
Hmm.
For sure. All right. Anyone else have any questions? We're coming up on that 2 hour mark, and I feel like we've covered a lot. Everything.
No, this was very illuminating. Like, thank you so much for like giving your brain power to this.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I like this was totally selfish asking you to do this, because I have so many questions and like I have it. This is a mindset thing, right? I have it in my head that I am not a big enough author to do this, right? Like I don't have enough fans. I haven't sold enough books. I don't have enough name recognition. Because Kickstarter is for like people who are a big deal, right?
Okay, but I
That's
am
how it lives
I'm
inside
a
my
less
head.
big deal than you. I have sold less books probably. I know I have less like newsletter subscribers, etc. So, and like I don't know how much you're hoping to make, but like if you,
I want to make enough
The
to do
fact
an
that I can make
audiobook.
$14,000 on a Kickstarter, obviously that's not net, but like the fact that I can crowdfund that much as not a big
Mm,
author should be really
mm,
encouraging to people. Like I don't even have 5K followers on this app. I have under a
mm.
thousand follower, like newsletter subscribers. You don't have to
How
be,
how many
yeah.
books are you ending up having to print?
For this last campaign.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't even done all the math because people are still like filling out their surveys and adding things on via the survey because I use Pledgebox this time so they can still do add-ons. It's like maybe 110 hardcovers, something like 60
Okay.
paperbacks. That's just a Token of a Wolf though, because there's also 90 of the Lux books total, physical books. So 100, I don't know, close to 300 books total with all the
Okay.
formats and all the books.
But you're still doing print on demand. It wasn't like you don't have to go into bulk printing.
I am doing print on demand, but this new printer, this Books Factory in the UK printer, is kind of a hybrid between print on demand and a like a print run company in the way that the more books you order, the cheaper it is per book. Like they still do POD, but I'm doing it more like a print run, but like a mini print run. Like, I don't know. I feel like for the Chinese printers that a lot of people use for their big print runs, like the minimum order is, 300 books or whatever. And I haven't been daring or confident enough thinking I could sell 300 hardcovers in a Kickstarter, which to be fair, this one sold just over 100, right? Not like maybe 300 books total, but not 300 of just that one hardcover. Um, so yeah, but being able to do the Books Factory is nice because of the number of books I sold, I will be paying less per book than I would have with Book Vault. So that's cool. But yeah, print on demand is still what I'm doing for this campaign and the next campaign. I am hoping to do a print run campaign to do an omnibus for the Lux trilogy like next year. And that's purely because that book is going to be so big that it's not going to be feasible for print on demand. That kind of binding isn't going to work, right?
No,
So
I totally get that.
yeah,
I totally get that. Okay. Hmm. Okay, I have ideas now. I have ideas of shit to do.
so many ideas. Feel free to message me with questions anytime.
Ah,
I am going to probably do another one of these, but on a different platform. Because my local like author co-op that I'm a part of wants me to do one like for them specifically. So it might be on Substack. I haven't figured that out yet, but we shall see. I will do it again, but I'm also going to try to put this on YouTube. Fingers crossed.
I also took notes and I emailed them to you if you want to like use that as content points over the next while, or make a Substack blog answering them, whatever, however that might be helpful.
For sure. People have asked like, why don't you write a little book, or like I have my little like my pamphlet, for
Yeah.
self-published authors, like the 30-page PDF, like the basics of self-publishing, and they're like, why don't you do that for Kickstarter? I'm like, because Anthea Sharp already wrote a book. Like, just go read her book. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Someone already wrote a book, and it's a very helpful book. So I'm not gonna do that, but I will definitely. I'm definitely willing to like post, notes or whatever.
What
I'm
is
just
the
not going to
book
do a
called
huge
one more
comprehensive
time?
written thing. What's that?
What was the book called one more time?
Kickstarter for Authors by Anthea Sharp. Anthea, and then just Sharp. Exactly how you think.
is that like does it give you a checklist? I need a fucking checklist.
My ADHD brain needs a
Anthea's
checklist.
book is very helpful as far as setting up your whole Kickstarter. She also, though, she has a free checklist. I'm pretty sure her checklist is free on her website. I haven't looked at it in a while. I'm pretty sure I looked at it for my first campaign, though. So the Facebook group is called Kickstarter for Authors, and her book, and she runs the Facebook group. Like, she founded that group, and then her book is called Kickstarter for Authors. And she does have a free checklist. She also does the pre-flight check, which she charges $50 basically to go look at your campaign and give you like in-depth feedback on it. Which is
Adding it to my wish list right now.
yeah, that's definitely a good one to look at.
And it's recent. It's from 2023, so it's
She
probably still
updates.
really
Yeah, she
relevant.
keeps it updated because
Good.
Kickstarter changes, right? Like platforms change and they change and update things. So she
Good.
tries to keep it updated as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good resource. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the checklist is free if you find her website. I think you can download a free checklist, and I did use that for my first campaign, and it is helpful to have something like that for sure when you're
Yeah.
doing it for the first time.
Mhm.
So awesome! Thank you guys.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for helping. Thanks for asking questions. I was like trying to take notes. I was like, what are all the things I need to talk about? I don't
I
even
took
know.
like a bulleted list of the topics because I probably missed a few things, but as best as I could. And then I wrote down as many questions as I could capture. So